Hi guys, welcome back to Catching Up. Hopefully this series is going to be coming back now. I'm going to try and watch as many new films from this year that I've missed so far, and new ones that are coming out as possible soon. So this is of course the first of this year. I think the last one might have been Ant-Man last year, so yeah, let's get back into the swing of things. This time with Bad Neighbours 2, also known in the US as Neighbours 2. I don't know if I talked about it in my best of list that I did a couple of years ago that the original Bad Neighbours was on, but in the UK it's called Bad Neighbours because there's a Australian soap opera that's really popular here called Neighbours, and they didn't want to confuse it. Bad Neighbours was a film starring Seth Rogen, and Seth Rogen moves into this house and then goes next door, and he's a part of a frat and they're partying loads, and it's disrupting the neighbours, who are played by Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne. This is the sequel. This came out 2 years afterwards, and basically this film is almost the exact same as the original, except instead of having a frat, it's a sorority. Chloe Grace Moretz stars in this movie, and basically she joins a sorority at the beginning of the film, but she realises how shit it is because sororities aren't allowed to party, so it means that if they want to party they have to go to frat houses, and when they go to frat houses it's incredibly overly sexualised. The guys just basically bring the people from the sorority to have sex with them. So Chloe Grace Moretz goes to there, meets two people, and they all decide that they're going to stand up and create their own sorority where they can party and do whatever the fuck they want. So that's exactly what they do. So they go looking for a house and they find one, and when they're in there they find Zac Efron from the first movie, who has run out away from home because his best friend, played by Dave Franco, is getting married, and basically they're no longer going to be roommates because the guy wants to move into that apartment. So Zac Efron runs back to this house and meets the girls and basically gives them tips and basically says, if you bring like all these people into the sorority, you can afford it. But the problem is Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne from next door, they are trying to move out, and they have a 30-day period where the people who are buying the house can come and look around just to make sure nothing has changed. So then of course Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne decide to go in and say, don't party please, we want to move out. They say no. The war starts again, but this time with girls. Unlike a lot of comedy sequels that basically retread the original movie, surprisingly this film does actually stand on its own. I'm not saying this is a masterpiece or anything, because neither was the original, but honestly there were a lot of really good laughs in this film. When I originally saw the trailer I thought this movie was gonna suck. I thought the trailer looked so bad. The problem with the original movie is all the best jokes from the original movie are in the trailer. And I was really worried they were going to do that again with the second movie, because the trailer for the second movie was not funny at all. But luckily, the worst jokes were actually in the trailer, so maybe they learnt their mistakes. The jokes that are in the trailer are some of the worst in the film, some of the cheapest laughs in the entire film. A lot of the film is a lot funnier than the actual trailer. But I did have some major problems with the film. It was far from perfect. I thought Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne were not in the film that much. At least not compared to the first film. And I thought what made the first film so funny and what I really liked is the awkward humour that they had. The awkward like jokes that they would make together. And there were many scenes where yeah, it would go on a bit too long, but they would be awkwardly firing back and forth. And that's barely in this film at all. I mean, there's barely any scenes of them together in this film. And pretty much every single scene of them together either has their child or one of the other family from the original movie who are also helping them to get these neighbours out. Also, the first 15-20 minutes of the film is really slow. I mean, all the jokes in the first 15-20 minutes are not funny. They're not really bad or anything, they're just not funny. I don't really know how to explain it. I just did not laugh for a while in the film, and that is definitely a problem. Also, I felt as a whole the film seemed to go on a bit too long. Like, I honestly thought the film could have ended at like the 45-minute mark, like halfway through. There's basically this big climax that happens halfway through the film. Yeah, then they go and have another big climax, but I thought that first big scene could have been the end of the film. There wasn't much else I thought they could do after that, and everything after that scene kind of just seemed to be they're just trying to stretch the film out because they need to make it an hour and a half. But, you know, some of the things I enjoyed about the first film return here. I do like Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne when they're on screen. Seth Rogen and Zac Efron's chemistry is really fucking good. They have a few fantastic scenes together. When Zac Efron goes back to Seth Rogen's side, which I believe was in the trailers, if it's not, I'll put a spoiler warning or something at the top, I don't know. But when Zac Efron leaves the girls and goes on to Seth Rogen's side, the film gets a lot funnier because they have a lot of scenes together where Zac Efron is basically a man-child and Seth Rogen has to parent him. And those scenes, I think, are really funny, and honestly are some of the funniest scenes in the film. There are a few reoccurring jokes in the film, some of which work, some of which I don't think work at all. Like, basically, there's a scene right at the beginning, it's one of the opening scenes, where Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne's baby finds Rose Byrne's vibrator. And all throughout the film, there are loads of jokes where literally the joke is that the baby now loves this vibrator and it's now her favourite toy. I mean, yeah, I will admit the first couple of times I laughed at that, but it really did start to get repetitive because they kept making the joke over and over again, and it was pretty much the exact same joke they were making, and it just stopped being funny. I think there was one callback to it right at the end, which was funny because they kind of switched it up a bit, and any time they made that joke again but made it a tiny bit different, it was funny, but for the most part that joke was the exact same. And they make it a fucking lot in this film. You know, it gets really, really boring. Also, there's a few bits in the film that I think are just massively skimmed over. Like, there's a scene at the beginning where Chloe Moretz meets these two girls who are in a sorority with her, and basically they're getting along, they're finding stuff out about each other, and she basically goes, I'm a virgin, I've done everything you can do with a guy except having sex. And so you think they're going to make a big deal about her losing her virginity later on in the film, or you think something's going to actually go somewhere. Literally, there's one tiny shot in a montage where they're having a party for her losing her virginity. They don't explain it at all. They don't explain who the guy is, where he came from, or anything, because you literally don't see her talk to any guys in the film except for, of course, like Zac Efron and like Seth Rogen and maybe a couple of guys at the beginning in the frat, but she like hates them, so it wouldn't have been them. It's just kind of confusing. It would have been better if they actually kind of explained some things like that. Also, I thought all the sorority girls were really fucking annoying. Like, at first I thought they were fine. Like, I thought I was gonna enjoy them. I thought they had good chemistry. I thought they seemed alright characters. But as the film progressed, they seemed to get more and more annoying, and I just disliked them more and more. Especially Chloe Grace Moretz, which is weird because I'm a big fan of her as an actress. I've said many times I loved her in the Kick-Ass movies, even the second one, which I do not like at all. But in this, I thought she wasn't terrible. I don't know, I just didn't like the character that much. I think she did a good job of being the pothead girl who doesn't seem to care about anything, but it seemed like the personality of the character seemed to go all over the place. Like, there'd be 1 second where she's just that stoner girl who doesn't give a shit about anything, then there's the next scene where she's just your average teenage, like, average stereotypical teenage girl who's constantly texting and cries at The Fault in Our Stars and things like that. So I thought her character wasn't great, wasn't the best developed, and honestly she wasn't that funny. She didn't really have many jokes. In fact, the sorority scenes weren't really that funny at all. But for me, what really stands out in it, the scenes that are actually funny and that kept me going and kept me enjoying the film, are Seth Rogen and Zac Efron scenes, and Rose Byrne, of course, as well. They have some really, really funny scenes together. I like the fact that even though the story is pretty much the exact same as the original, there are only a few jokes that they copy. In fact, I think there may only be one, and that's literally just a callback to the airbag scene from the original. And they don't actually do the exact same joke, they actually kind of make it a little bit different. And it's less of them stealing or copying the joke, and more of them doing a nice little callback to it. And I thought that was pretty good. As a whole, Bad Neighbours 2 is not terrible, but at the same time it's not great. I definitely think it's better than a lot of other comedy sequels we've seen over the last few years. I mean, there was Ted 2 last year, which... that was fucking awful. I still think that was the worst film I saw last year. And this is fucking miles above that film. That film was just awful. But Bad Neighbours 2, I wouldn't say go rush out to see it in the cinema, because it's not worth that. I don't know. It's definitely worth watching, but maybe just wait till it comes out on DVD or goes to Netflix or something and give it a watch. It's one of those films where honestly I enjoyed it, I'm glad I watched it, but I do not think I'll watch it again. Honestly, the first film's kind of like that. I know I put it on my best films of that year list, but in hindsight, I have not watched it since, and I don't really feel the need to watch it again. Maybe I'll watch it again if, like, I have a friend who's never seen it, and I'm like, oh, let's watch it, or something like that. But I think that'll be it. Probably the same for this film as well. As a whole, I think this film is kind of as enjoyable as the first film, but it has way too many problems to make it as good as the first film. And the first film wasn't even like some fucking masterpiece or anything. It was a very flawed film. I just think the flaws in this film are a lot harder to ignore. So yeah, I had a lot of problems with this film. It was funny, I enjoyed it, I had a good time, and I'm glad I watched it, but there were a few too many problems for it for me. So I guess that's all I have to say. Have you watched Bad Neighbours 2? If so, what did you think? Put it down in the comment section below, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.